Welcome. Good morning. Thanks for coming out in the rain. This is Geography 10, World Regions, Peoples, and States. This is Lecture 1. If you're not here for this class, please feel free to get up and leave. Okay. Today's going to be mostly a housekeeping day. There'll only be a handful of lecture-like substantive type things. How are you? Yeah, wet? Good. Welcome to the second semester. These are our goals for the class this semester. This class functions as an introduction to geography. Who wants to offer a guess as to what geography is? Anybody? What's geography? Am I going to have to call on somebody? How many of you feel like you have some idea? Man, we're doing that here. Okay, what do you think it is? The study of how people interact with their environment over time. That's quite good. Well done. Anybody else? You all satisfied with that? Okay. Do you feel like you know? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It could be like the study of the world, like opposed to geology, which would be like the physical world. It would be like everything above that.
Okay, the study of the world, but unlike geology, which is the physical world, this would be everything above that?
Yeah, like culture.
Culture, which sits on top of the rocks, right? Okay. Anybody else? How many of you read National Geographic growing up? Quite a few of you. Is that what? Do you think that's geography? Is that, I mean, it's called National Geographic, right? Is that geography? Yeah. Okay. So if that's geography, then what is it? Can we get a little further into this? What does that suggest that geography is? Really high quality photographs, right? Oh, you decided this is enough? Wrong number. All right. Okay. Anyone else? If geography is like National Geographic, then would that satisfy you for the purposes of this semester? Would you feel satisfied at the end of the semester if what you had gotten was a more detailed or sort of significant understanding of National Geographic? Yeah? Pretty much? No? Not really. Why not? Geography has two parts, physical and cultural. Okay, landforms, like geomorphology. Okay. Okay, so we've got a kind of physical side of geography, which is about things like landforms, the sort of shape and makeup of the surface of the Earth. We have another part of geography, cultural, sometimes more generally called human geography, which is about people and the way they relate to that surface of the Earth. And National Geographic is just a really pretty way of going at that. Really captivating, catches the eye. Okay? That's all. I mean, there are a lot of ways to define it. In our department, we tend to focus in on the things we just talked about. The surface of the Earth, and by that we mean, well, basically everything relevant to humans, from subsurface, tectonics, geology, geomorphology, up to the sort of top of the atmosphere. So we're not going to talk about astrophysics. Other than that, we pretty much got everything fair game. It could be pretty much anything else having to do with humans and their relationship to the surface of the Earth. So that will include oceans, as well as land, that kind of thing. This is a class in which we try to introduce that ridiculously broad subject and give you the tools to think about that interrelationship between humans and the Earth. Okay? So this is going to include an understanding of both physical and human diversity, all of the differences, the diverse landforms, cultures, peoples, that kind of thing. We're going to look at social, physical, and ecological processes over space and time. So now all we're doing is getting a little bit more specific about the kinds of things that make up this subject. And we're going to consider how these have produced patterns at various scales. For example, regions. The sort of generic name for this class is World Regional Geography. And there are a dozen or more textbooks out there with that title or something very close to that title. Regions is a concept that is very central to geography, has been central to geography for a long time. It's sort of an unavoidable part of thinking about this relationship between people and the surface of the Earth. Patterns, regions are a kind of pattern, right? We can sort of look at the surface of the Earth and the makeup of the people who live on it, and we can see various kinds of patterns. And those patterns, once we sort of organize them spatially, take on the appearance of regions of various kinds. But of course, this depends. What kinds of regions we see depends on the scale at which we are thinking and looking at things. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about why that's so important. Here's some examples. Oh, should I kill the lights up front here? Enhance the PowerPoint effect. How do you like your lights? Is that good? You want more light, less light? Good. Okay. So what are these? We have three different maps here. The one on the bottom comes out of an atlas and depicts what? Climates. Climates of the world. Apparently, oceans don't have any climates. Climates only affect land. Actually, that's not true. The map leaves out the climates of the oceans. I don't really have a good place to sit. I'm going to have to or look at this. How many types of climates are there? 6. Tropical, dry, arid, and semi-arid, mesothermal, microthermal, polar, and highland. Pretty much covers it, right? You seen one of these maps before? All right, that's one way of organizing the world into regions. 6 of them on the basis of climate. What about this one up here? Anybody have any idea what that is? What are those regions? That map has a very specific purpose. Anyone want to guess what it is? How many regions are there? Is it 5? There are 5 around land. Greenland apparently doesn't count. Or no, maybe Greenland is part of Atlantic Arctic. Maybe the oceans are their own. So maybe there are in fact 8. Pacific, Indian, Atlantic Arctic, and then those terrestrial ones. Why do you suppose the lines are drawn where they are? Why are the lines out in the ocean and not right up against the coasts of these continents? Any guesses? Tectonics. Good guess, but no. I mean, if it was tectonics, right, this line right here would have to go splitting right down past us, right? Because there's actually, that fault is not in the ocean. It's right here in California. Any other guesses? Yeah. Continental shelf. That's a good guess because continental shelf does extend out into the ocean beyond the coastline of each continent, right? But no, that's not it either. Anybody here a bird watcher? Anybody like to watch birds? Look at birds? No? Nobody? That's a habit you get into when you get older and make more money. This is a map for birders, believe it or not. This is a map that organizes the world into the spaces, the units, the regions, within which, if you're a really diehard bird watcher, you organize your sightings. I kid you not. So if you see a bird here, it goes on your Africa list. If you see the same bird here, it goes on a separate list and counts as a separate sighting. This is really important if you're a diehard bird watcher because they're really into every sighting they can get. Granted, that's a little odd, but why do they do this? Because the birds of the world typically are found within these regions, and that includes the coastal marine sort of margins of each terrestrial area. And it's really true. If a bird that's supposed to be or is usually seen only here and has rarely been seen here turns up here, people from the wealthy parts of the world fly down there very rapidly in hopes of seeing that bird within the line drawn around this continent because that's a separate sighting. You're supposed to find this at least a little bit amusing? No? Yes? All right. So there you have the world organized into regions according to bird life, according to the patterns of the movements of birds. And believe me, we won't talk that much about bird watching this semester, but it's a useful example for certain things. What about this one? Any ideas what those are? Anybody recognize any of those little logos? They may be outdated by this point. At the time that I found this map on the web, these referred to the sort of consortiums, the corporate entities that organized the assignment of web addresses, URLs. So each continent had its own, at that point anyway, sort of organizing institution for keeping track of web addresses. Here again, the world organized into regions according to a different process or phenomenon. What do all three of these maps have in common? Any thoughts? Yeah. They separate the world into regions, exactly. They are world maps. They encompass the entire surface of the Earth. They divide the surface of the Earth into more or less contiguous or comprehensive units. And for that matter, they tend to be organized more or less in terms of the continents, right? That's not quite so true in the case of this map. You know, this, you might call this one region, this tropical region, kind of cuts across. Most of the world regional geography textbooks are organized in this fashion as well. They're organized by continent. And somewhat in the mode of National Geographic, you get a chunk of the semester devoted to each continent, and you go to those places, and you learn various fascinating things about them. And that includes geology, natural resources, political systems, linguistic and cultural phenomena, religions, that kind of thing. And it's something, like, again, like National Geographic, it's something of a grab bag. It's almost as though you start with the continents, because that's a kind of neat organizing framework for encompassing the surface of the world. And then from there, it's just a question of, well, what's interesting? And works really well for a magazine. Helps keep things interesting, gives you something to think about when you're sitting around reading a magazine. But it's not necessarily a very rigorous way of thinking about this broad question, right? It's more of a curiosities and anecdotes, stories. Yeah, they usually have some kind of practical significance, but it can be somewhat ad hoc. And that's a big part of why we don't use any of those textbooks in this class. They're fascinating, but they're not that fascinating. They tend to be long. They tend to be somewhat tedious, in my opinion. They also tend to be exorbitantly expensive. And I'm not terribly taken with them, so we're not going to use one. Feel free, of course, to go to the library and look at one anytime you want. You might find a lot of interesting information there. And hopefully we'll cover a lot of material that we would cover if we used one of those textbooks, but we're not going to. All right, now we're going to scale down somewhat. What's this? Any thoughts? The green box indicates Western Turkic Iranian something. Red is Eastern Mongol and Tungus something. Blue, Southern Tibetan Himalayan something. Any ideas what that something might be? What's it sound like? Guesses? Anyone? Yeah. People. Indeed, this is about people. Any thoughts about what aspect of people? Their culture. Actually, that's close. In this case, it's actually a linguistic map. It refers to families of languages that are spoken in these boxes. Any idea what's going on right here? Does that mean that the people there speak all of the languages? Come on, that's an easy, it's almost a trick question. It's not a trick question. It's actually just a stupidly easy question. What's the answer? No, of course not. It doesn't mean that all the people in the little box here speak all of these different languages. It means that there are some people of each of those groupings in that box. How precise do you think that is? Do you think there are like nice border fences that map just exactly along these lines? They put it right out into the ocean and stuff. But I keep all of the Eastern Mongol Tungus in here and not let them out over here where they wouldn't belong? No, this is not the kind of line that gets fortified and defended. In fact, these lines are probably, grossly misleading if you actually try to go down onto the ground and look around and see whether they applied or not, right? These are just gross depictions. How do you suppose this map was made? We'll get into that. Part of what we're going to look at is how maps are made. Who are the people who make them? In this case, made by scholars of linguistics, right? Where's this? Any ideas? This little inset map. Yeah, that's Afghanistan, which, interestingly enough, is not labeled on this map. And what's this? What are the units here? Yeah, these are ethnic groups. Probably correspond pretty closely to linguistic categories, right? And we see that if you zoom in on Afghanistan, which according to this map has a green line running roughly east-west through roughly the middle of the country, and inside of it we have Western Turkic Iranian speakers, and then to the south we have, who knows, maybe they don't speak anything. No, that's not true. But once we take a closer look, we discover that it's actually not even remotely that simple. There's no east-west line. In fact, there's a bunch of different groups, and again, we have, what? A simplification. It's not like everybody here is Pashtun, and there are no Pashtuns up here because it's all Tajiks. It's mixed up. On the ground, it's really mixed up, but this is a simplification intended to give you some kind of sense of the organization or the spatial distribution of people of different ethnicities within the country we call Afghanistan. Would this be a useful map to you if you were in the US military and you had to go to Afghanistan and try to communicate with the people there? Yes? How useful? Might be something you got like in your first week of training before you went, right? Give you just a general overview. Then you get this map. You actually arrive in Kabul, hopefully they have better maps than this. This one is actually better suited for a tourist. But nonetheless, when you actually get to Kabul and land on the ground, you're suddenly faced with the fact that, boy, this little simplification here is not that useful all of a sudden, because you're actually dealing with block by block, street by street, still more variation. And the sort of rules of thumb or the nice, simple depictions you got in that earlier map actually would not be adequate to you, right? Now, the point of all of this is, again, to suggest that the patterns you see or the patterns that you need to see or want to understand are going to depend on what you're doing, what the purpose of your activity and map are, and the scale at which what you're doing matters. If the scale of what you're doing is going door to door trying to communicate with the people who live in Kabul, you need a very different map than this one up here. It's a fairly simple point. I realize it may even seem banal, but it actually, when you start thinking through all the ramifications of this, it has some serious implications. This is, again, to give you a sense of what I mean when we talk about processes producing patterns at different scales. And here we're only talking about spatial scale, right? Neighborhoods versus regions within a country versus continental regions. We're not even talking yet about temporal scale, the length of time over which something happens or a process unfolds to create a pattern, right? The temporal scale at which these patterns were produced is actually quite different from the temporal scale at which the patterns depicted by these nation-state boundaries were produced, right? Okay. One more example. Here is our own country, the United States, divided up in 3 different ways for 3 different purposes. Any thoughts what these purposes might be? This one I really like. This is how you divide up the country if you are fascinated with natural disasters. Believe it or not. For some reason, these are the units that are relevant or have been found to be relevant for thinking about things like hurricanes and tornadoes and so on and so forth. Notice that we get our own unit all to ourselves. We have our own special mix of natural disasters, although it apparently does not include the Mojave Desert. That part is somehow not us when it comes to natural disasters. Why blue, green, orange? Who knows? But what about these two? This one I like. It's got we pulled them apart. I'm still trying to figure out why this is the Southwest when it's actually north of the Northeast, at least in part, and it's east of West. I can't remember which of these is which. One of these is the regional corporate breakdown of one of the nationwide real estate companies. This is how they organize their offices, so to speak. They have regions. The other one I think is like a telephone company or something like that, or maybe cell phones. In any case, again, this one makes a little bit more sense in terms of, but I mean, New England is, why not call it North Atlantic? Don't you think there should be some kind of consistency in the categories and the way the underlying framework they use to make sense of this? Maybe. Maybe it doesn't matter. All right, I want to ask you guys to do something. I'm going to pass out some maps. These are blank maps of the United States. I've got about 60 of them, so I need you to group into groups of like 4. Here, let me just maybe just pass them up the head of your aisle here, and then down sideways as necessary. Hopefully, we'll pass these out in roughly the right order. See how far those get. Can we pass these along back up? So, what we're going to do here is a little exercise. Make sure that some of them get to the back, please. I apologize if it turns out we don't have enough, but if we don't have enough, just get into bigger groups, please. This is a fairly simple exercise. What I'm going to ask each of you to do, I'm going to give you 5 or 10 minutes in your groups, and I want you just to talk among yourselves and decide on some way that you'd like to fill in this map. And I honestly don't care what you use. I'm just interested in your stab. Take a stab at dividing the country into regions. You can use whatever organizing principle you want. In past years, I've found that guys like to do this in terms of sports, that kind of thing, but whatever you like. So talk amongst yourselves about where those boundaries between those units ought to be. And then fill in, provide the boundaries and the labels. And then I'm going to collect them. And between now and Thursday, I'm going to look at all your maps. And I'm going to pick a handful of them, maybe 3 or 4, maybe as many as 10. And I'm going to reproduce them on overhead slides. And on Thursday, we're going to look at them and talk about them. And again, this is not for a grade. This is not going to, you don't have to put your names on these. This is entirely anonymous. I will just tell you that on Thursday, I have 2 criteria that I'm going to apply in deciding, maybe 3, which ones to use. And that is, I'm going to use the ones that are interesting and amusing. And then the third sort of criteria, kind of small footnote criteria, is I'm not going to use the ones that are offensive. And what we're going to find is that all of us have in our heads already, whether or not we think about it, a regional sense of the United States. Actually, we've got lots of different regional senses of the United States. And what we're also going to discover is that those regional senses of the United States probably tell us more about you than they do about the United States. So keep that in mind. All right, 5, 10 minutes, something like that. Go.